What Really Happened with your host, Mike Rivero, because World War III is a really bad idea. Here is your host, Michael Rivero.
And aloha, America. Welcome to our show today. It's Thursday, October 27th, 2016. I'm still having to be a little bit careful with my voice, but I'm feeling a lot better. So thanks to everybody who sent in get well wishes and recommendations on how to get better. And it seems to just have focused in my larynx. And so I'm going to have to go kind of low-key for these next 3 hours. And hopefully my voice will not desert me and abandon me and during all of that. We have a lot of stuff to talk about today. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. Mike is in our control room, twiddling the dials, keeping us out of trouble, and ready to answer the phone when you call on in. Starting with the political news, obviously, top stories these days, we're seeing more and more, shall we say, uncivilized behavior by Hillary's supporters. Apparently, citizen poll watchers are being attacked by Hillary's supporters. Now, in I think it's about 36 of the states, the law is citizens can watch the polls. They can't engage in partisan campaigning, but they can watch the polls looking for irregularities. And based on the problems that have already surfaced during the primaries and during the early voting, people are showing up to keep an eye and report on every single incidence of bad behavior by these electronic voting machines or the poll workers. Apparently, one of the grassroots vote fraud organizations has had their computers hacked, and apparently they tried to destroy the system. They don't want anybody looking at this election. They're telegraphing the fact that they're stealing this thing. They're literally stealing your nation away from you. And there was a very telling article that came on out from Zero Hedge about anti-Trump violence sweeps the nation. And again, this is all brown shirt tactics. This is how Adolf Hitler seized power in Germany. He had this little group of supporters called the brown shirts, and they would go on out, commit acts of violence against his opponents, disrupt his opponents' rallies, engage in sabotage, exactly the same thing we're seeing the Hillaryites do. Or the Clinton Nazis, there's a good name for you. And it's just all over the place, and more people are very concerned about Election Day violence by the Democrats if it looks like Hillary is not going to be able to steal this election. Now, over in Hollister, homeowner J.W. Payne is sort of been used to the vandalism over the fact that he supports Donald Trump. And the vandals, of course, tear up his signs, and they've burned a couple of his American flags. And that tells you right there where these people are coming from. They're not in favor of America. And they decided to escalate things, and yesterday Payne woke up to find not only his Trump support signs destroyed and taken, but his house had been pelted with eggs, his American flag burned again, and they'd smashed the windows in his car. And this is exactly the face of Hillary's supporters right now. Now, here's an interesting little story. This is coming out of Oregon, and in the town, there is a gentleman up in Portland, and his license plate says Trump, and he is reporting that he gets anonymous phone calls, vulgar language, being flipped off, and just a lot of harassment and hostility. There's only one problem. This guy's name is Brian Trump. It's his own name on the license plate, and Hillary's people are attacking him. I mean, it's just ridiculous. Now, you probably heard that Donald Trump, his star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, was destroyed over the weekend. Back in 2007, because of his reality show, Donald Trump got his star on the Walk of Fame. And it was vandalized Wednesday, and this individual, Jamie Otis, has been arrested for destroying Donald Trump's star on the Walk of Fame. Now, because this is a sidewalk and accidents happen, the Hollywood Chamber of Commerce has an emergency repair kit, and Trump's star has already been replaced. Now, Otis, when he was being interviewed as a hero for Hillary Clinton in the media, said that he had stolen the metal components out of the center, Trump's name and the icon, intending to auction them off to raise money for the women who are accusing Donald Trump of groping them 30 years ago. And this looks like it's a very pathetic attempt to keep the groping story alive in the media, because most of them have already been discredited. The last one, how desperate they were, was a porn star. They were out there saying, Donald Trump offered this woman money to do what this woman does for money, without the cameras and lights, and it really didn't get any traction. And so this stunt with Donald Trump's star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame appears to have just been a pathetic effort to keep this story alive in the media. And they've arrested this guy who vandalized it, and it's had a little bit of a backfire. And you're going to love this part, because apparently in Hollywood, there are a lot of homeless people. One of them is a Donald Trump supporter who has now basically plunked himself down right next to Donald Trump's star, and he says he's going to guard it. He is personally going to guard this star against any more vandalism from now until the election. And he's getting a lot of media coverage, and it's very positive for Trump. And so this stunt to keep the groping story alive has backfired. We're going to take a second here to do a shout-out to our on-air affiliates who are rejoining our network. And yes, my voice is still having some difficulty. I'm feeling okay. It's just the voice. And I was talking to another friend of mine who had this cold and said it sort of deteriorated into a laryngitis, which appears to be what I'm dealing with right now. But thankfully, it's not contagious over the radio, so you're going to be okay. All right, let's take a phone call. Bill in Philadelphia, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind? Bill, are you there?
Yes. When James Comey was testifying before Congress, you were mentioning the section about Title 18, that it doesn't show intent. What was the whole title of the law?
Well, it's Title 18, Section 798, or 793. I'm blanking. I mean, it may be Section 793. And basically, that section of Title 18 says that the exposure of classified information to persons not authorized to have it through negligence is punishable by a year in jail and being banned from holding any kind of public office. So intent was not needed. Now, Comey came on back and said, well, yeah, okay, the law says intent is not needed, but we've never really prosecuted anybody that we felt didn't intend to do wrong, which that too is just another lie.
Okay, because what I was going to do was I was going to write every person in this committee to ask James to read that law into record and ask them for him to explain why she couldn't be prosecuted because it doesn't say the word intent.
That's absolutely right, and I'm sure Trey Gowdy's already aware of this. Comey has been called on this, that intent is not required under Title 18. But he's basically saying no reasonable prosecutor would move forward with this case because no reasonable prosecutor wants to die under sudden mysterious circumstances or something like that.
I understand. Thank you, Michael.
All right, thank you very much. We're going to let you go. Now then, moving on here, Scott Adams, who's famous as the creator of Dilbert, is basically saying that at this point, you can describe Hillary Clinton supporters as the bully party. The only unifying characteristic of all of Hillary Clinton's supporters is a willingness to bully other people in all of its forms. whether it's tearing up the signs, throwing eggs at a house, smashing Donald Trump's star, hacking the computers at grassroots vote integrity programs, hacking my servers. They're bullies. So, anyway, yet another Hillary campaign worker, and this is a campaign worker, not just a supporter. This is a campaign worker was canvassing a neighborhood, was at a home where the occupant was away, and just decided to tear down all of his Donald Trump signs in full view of the security camera. So that's what's going on. They're not even trying to hide the fact they want to steal the United States of America away from you, the American people, and give it to Israel and Hillary's cronies and the Clinton Foundation and the illegal immigrants and the refugees. That's what they want to do. Now, the attempt to control the dialogue going into the election has reached very obvious, heavy-handed levels. Twitter is now censoring and deleting tweets that are critical of Hillary Clinton. They're shadow banning people. I verified they're shadow banning me when I put stuff out there on Twitter. Facebook is saying they're going to start banning anything by and about Donald Trump as hate speech. He's a hater. He hates the illegal immigrants and the refugees. No, he doesn't. He's just concerned that they're illegals. YouTube is banning any and all videos about Danny Williams, Bill Clinton's black son. All of these corporate providers on the Internet, just like the corporate media, TV and newspapers, are all part of Hillary Clinton's campaign. Now, Julian Assange has come on out announcing that apparently the Clinton campaign has tried to break into WikiLeaks servers to destroy them. And they failed miserably. But again, we've been seeing this all along. These people believe that playing dirty is their divine right. Now, apparently, Goldman Sachs is now endorsing Goldman Sachs is endorsing Hillary Clinton for president. No big surprise there. Right now, every Wall Street firm engaging in fraud wants Hillary as president because she's just going to let things go on as they have. Donald Trump in the White House with Trey Gowdy as Attorney General. They're going to start arresting some of these CEOs and tossing them in jail like they're doing over in Iceland. All right, let's take a phone call. Fat Man in New Mexico, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey there, Michael. How you doing today?
Doing fine.
Hey, man, I live in a small village in New Mexico.
Yes.
The capital of the world. And just went back to my
Whoops. What happened?
whole town. That was weird.
Okay.
We lose you?
Are you back? No. Are you there?
I'm here.
Okay. We had a weird noise on the telephone, and we lost what you were saying. So you're living in this small town in New Mexico, and please repeat what you said after that.
Okay. Patches are largely a Hispanic town. Good place to live. I like it. It's just there's no outwardly Trump support here. Granted, New Mexico is historically been a yellow dog, Democrat, liberal, retired, whatever I call it. It's funny because
okay, well, let me ask you a question. What is the name of the town that you are in? Because every time we have somebody call on in and say there's no support for Donald Trump where I live, we immediately get 5 other phone calls from the exact same location saying this guy is trying to kid you. Everybody around here is in favor of Donald Trump. And we have come to understand that one of the tactics used by the Hillary Clinton campaign is to have their paid phone bank people call up radio shows and saying nobody here wants Trump, everybody wants Hillary, and it's just another way of trying to convince everybody that Hillary is doing well. So what is the name of the town where you are?
Hatch, New Mexico.
Hatch?
And I am a Trump supporter myself. I mean, I've been an anti-Clinton.
Okay, the phone connection's gone bad again. Matt, we're going to have to let you go, and switch to Peter in Los Angeles. Aloha, Peter. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, hi, Mike. You left out a key one when you were talking about the thugism of the Hillary Clinton campaign and the Nazi. They firebombed at the North Carolina Trump office.
The GOP office, yeah.
They actually fired. Now, remember, we had a break-in at the Democratic office for Watergate, and that caused all the trouble that it caused. Nobody was there, nobody was hurt, whatever. This is a firebombing. And what's the status on that investigation? Plus, the murders of Seth Rich or whatever his name is, and the murders of the two lawyers of Julian Assange, and beating people up and inciting violence. They're exactly like Ernst Röhm and the brown shirts. And that's, and you know what, Mike? Bill Clinton is so involved in this and making money. I'm sure he's getting payoffs and laundering money through the Clinton Foundation as well. Certainly he's hid that he was using a pseudonym and knew all along about the server and lied about it. But I'll bet any money that he's thinking that if Hillary goes down, then he goes down too, maybe. And he'll do anything, and we have all the apparatus of the bully boys for the FBI and the CIA also aligned against Donald Trump.
Yeah, this really is a war between the establishment and we, the people of the United States of America, and we have to win this one. We have to win this one.
Mike, we don't win this one. It's the end, really.
It is.
I think, anyway.
It's the end of our nation as we thought it was supposed to be.
But, I love the fact that the people are finally seeing the media for what it is, and the TV and the newspapers and all these columnists that they put so much trust in. Is completely misplaced, and they've been manipulated for years, and the government lying, and the president lying, and Hillary, everybody making money on us. And, Mike, when the Cayman Islands, if Trump does get elected,
yes,
right, and the Cayman accounts become known because she'll be investigated, and the Bahamas account, and
the Clinton Foundation itself. I mean, that's the big slush fund money laundering right there.
Mike, I'm betting that we'll find, if that happens, that she's much, much wealthier than Donald Trump is, and she stole every penny of it.
Absolutely.
Made his money legally.
Absolutely. Yep. Absolutely. It's a criminal government. It has been steeped in drug money, corruption, going back to the Iran-Contra scandal of the 1980s, and it is time to free our government from, our country from, a criminal government.
I know you said yesterday, the day before, you were talking about a blanket pardon,
yes,
Gerald Ford for future.
That Obama might do that.
I'm sure that's right. I'm sure that's right, and Obama may pardon himself if that was the case.
It's never been put to a test at the Supreme Court whether a president can pardon himself. We may see that happen. I think the important thing right now is it doesn't matter if Obama pardons everybody and they escape legal consequences. What's important is the American people understand what's really been going on for the last 35 years and are on guard that it should not happen again. I mean, when you look at when Prohibition ended, those rum runners who had bought their way into the government got to stay in the government. But the American public were aware of what they'd been doing, and so their ability to do further harm was severely curtailed. And we may see the same thing here. Certainly it's going to be a long time before the American people ever allow a Bush or a Clinton into the White House again, and it's going to be decades before anybody puts any faith and trust in the corporate-owned media. Okay?
Michael, can I hang just real quick?
We're going to keep you through the commercial. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. And Peter, you had something else you wanted to share with us.
I just wanted to add on, since we're talking about the criminality of the Democratic Party in the election process and Obama himself and how he's been complicit, I wanted to re-point out to people in the audience here that this guy Creamer, the guy who headed up the violence and the dirty tricks that have been happening, who is a convicted felon, he has been to the White House over the last 7, 8 years 342 times. That's once every 7 weeks. He's met with President Obama himself over 40 times. And I submit to you that there are cabinet members that have not met with Obama as many times as this guy has. Obama is foursquare involved in this with both feet. And you think he's not covering up crimes, and also that he can't afford to have anybody who might investigate him following him in office?
Yes.
And that's the point I wanted to make, Mike.
Well, we already know that Obama lied about when he knew of Hillary's private email server, because he told all of America that he learned about it from the corporate media the same time as everybody else, and now because of all these leaked emails, we're finding out not only did he know about this server long before that, he was actually using it himself. And that makes him an accessory to whatever it is that Hillary was doing with that private email server. If she was selling for U.S. secrets to foreign interests and carrying on an espionage operation, then Obama is an accessory to that.
Well, like I say, more than some cabinet secretaries, I'll bet any money. A convicted felon, a dirty tricks operative, he gets in more than the Secretary of Transportation does.
Yes.
So,
yeah.
What can I say? I mean, that's my point. Thanks, Michael.
All right. Thank you very much. We're going to let you go on that phone call. Yeah, if you go back and read the history, All the President's Men, you will see the same pattern, where all of the dirty tricks operatives of creep had unfettered access to Richard Nixon. They could get to see him at any time they wanted, and any of the other government officials, cabinet members, and so forth had to get an appointment, wait for weeks and weeks and weeks to get a moment with the president. We're seeing that same pattern all over again. Now then, there's a new development that is very, very interesting, and we have to pay attention to it. It has to do with a gentleman named Eric Braverman. Now, Eric Braverman was formerly the CEO of the Clinton Foundation, and apparently came to be at odds with Hillary Clinton over this big stink involving Morocco, where the pay-for-play got out of control, and Braverman was saying Hillary created this mess and she knows it. It's not up to us to fix this thing. And Braverman has resigned and apparently is now very concerned about being fosterized and winding up in Fort Marcy Park, because we are now seeing reports from sources, including Western Sentinel, that Braverman has requested political asylum in Russia, and apparently it's gone all the way to Putin's desk about offering this guy asylum. And once he's in Russia and safe, he can start telling stories. And that may be coming on down the road. Which reminds me, has anybody seen Brian Pagliano alive lately? Because even with his immunity deal and Fifth Amendment, he is still a threat to Hillary Clinton. And it just doesn't seem that anybody has seen him lately. I think it's time we put his face on a milk carton. Getting on back to election fraud down in Florida in Broward County, and we know about Broward County and its record for honest and upstanding elections. Apparently, officials sent 2 sets of ballots to the same constituency. Now, the official reason is because the first set of ballots had a spelling error, but the second set was sent without requiring the first set to be sent back. So now they have twice as many ballots as voters in that precinct. Now, one of the electronic voting machine companies is called Dominion Voting, and their motto on their webpage is, "Together with our customers, we strive to change elections for the better." And that slogan takes on a whole new meaning when you realize Dominion Voting is a donor to the Clinton Foundation. Got to take a break here, and we'll be right back. And aloha, America. Pardon me. Welcome back to the show. And as you know, There's been a lot of vote fraud going on in all kinds of different areas. And it's an overlap. There's not just one fraud taking place. There's fraud taking place in the balloting, in the electronic machines, in the registrations, in the illegals who are voting, in the dead who are voting, and all of them put together can steal an election. And every time somebody catches a fraud, the corporate media and the establishment will say, well, okay, there's a little fraud, but it couldn't possibly change the outcome. By itself, no. But it's not operating by itself. Apparently up in Indiana, they're continuing to investigate this Democrat-connected voter registration project that was apparently making fraudulent voter registrations to be used to steal elections. Now, over in Denver, they're discovering the dead are voting and the living are voting more than once. You know the old saying, vote early and often. And they're finding that Coloradans who've been dead for years are having votes cast in their name. I mean, this thing is a joke. Now, the corporate media is responding to all these viral videos that show people pressing one button on the election machine and the vote jumping to the Democrat, whether it's a local race or the presidential race. And there's a lot of these videos out there on YouTube. And the corporate media is saying that this is merely a calibration error in the machines. Nothing to see here, just a calibration error. It'll be taken care of. I have 4 questions for the media. When was the last time you had to recalibrate your laptop, your tablet, or your cell phone? That's question number 1. Question number 2. Why do all these glitches and calibration errors seem to work in Hillary's favor? If it was an honest mistake, technical breakdown, statistically it should fall equally both directions, but we're not seeing that. 3, why does the corporate media continue to treat Americans as if we are all idiots and morons? And finally, question number 4, when the people of America get angry enough and start to burn the corporate media prostitutes and correspondents at the stake, do you prefer regular or extra crispy? Now, we're going to go back to the phones here. Tom in Minnesota, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Aloha, Michael. I want to thank you because on your site there you gave me some links there that convinced me I'm a libertarian anarchist and I wasn't going to vote. I got involved with the Ron Paul campaigns and, of course, the disappointments and all that. I just kind of give up on the system, but I listened to Trump's first 100-day in office Gettysburg speech there, and I listened to his Florida anti-globalist New World Order speech, and I realized that, there's probably a lot like me that were linked with the Ron Paul movement that just, what's the point of voting? But I can see right now that if we don't want our culture completely turned on its head and the freedom bar moved completely off the chart, and if Hillary gets in, that we got to at least try to keep the bar where it's achievable to advance the cause of humanity.
Well, if Hillary steals the White House, it's a red carpet for World War III, a hot war, a potentially, probably almost guaranteed nuclear war. What Hillary is facing, if she succeeds in stealing the White House, her problem is that everybody's going to know that's what happened. Because when you're out there talking to people, they all know there's something wrong with Hillary. And the Clintons in general, the corruption, the foundation, all of it. They know that the media is trying to sell them on this obviously corrupt candidate. And if Hillary steals the White House, everybody's going to know she did it. They're not going to listen to her. They're not going to feel any obligation whatsoever to obey that federal government. The reason for having elections, even in the worst dictatorships, they have elections. They had them under Stalin. They had them under Hitler. It's to create that illusion that the people are still somehow in control and by some convoluted method have voted for all the abuse being shoveled onto them. And that's what keeps the people in their place. If that illusion is shattered, which is what's happening right now, then the federal government is effectively going to be impotent. They simply don't have enough jackbooted thugs and guns to go on out and force 300 million Americans to go on living with the abuses that we've been living with. It's going to be a paralyzed government.
Yeah, so I encourage my fellow libertarians and Ron Paul people out there that have given up on the system. Donald Trump is no Ron Paul, and but at the same point, Hillary is just going to move the bar of their cause so far off the chart that something's got to be. I literally realize I got to go out and vote.
Yes, you do, and I'll tell you why. If you are registered to vote and you do not vote, then you have given the vote stealers an unused voter registration to use to vote for Hillary Clinton. And if you want a moment of clarity for the election that's coming up, stop thinking about whether or not you want to vote for Donald Trump and think of all the many reasons you have to vote against Hillary Clinton. And then decide accordingly.
Yep, I'm in a rural Minnesota county, and we know everyone in our county pretty much, and there's a lot of people voting that no one knows who they are and where they came from.
Well, there's another factor that is beginning to surface, and it's surfacing in the early voting, and that is that there is going to be a huge turnout this year. Now, obviously, some of it are these dead votes and multiple votes and illegal immigrant votes that are trying to skew this. But a lot of people are voting in this election who have not voted for a long time before. They don't have party affiliations. And as a result, they're being missed by the corporate media polls. And so this thing is still wide open. And again, if Trump has a landslide number of votes and they try and reverse that, everybody's going to know that's what happened. And I don't see Americans going along with a government they know is illegal, unconstitutional, and illegitimate much longer. Because we have to start thinking about the next generation of Americans. And what kind of a country are we leaving to them?
Right. It's time to pull back the curtain and see who the wizard really is, huh?
Yeah, and he's an ugly, mean drunk. What can I tell you? Thanks an awful lot for the phone call. We're going to switch over to George in Texas. Aloha, George. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Well, before I go on to what I'm about to say, I know you're a big fan of NASA, and this has to. I think you got to post this on your website. When Apollo 13 was in peril of not coming back to Earth, one man in Mission Control told the people in Mission Control in Houston about getting Apollo 13 back, and that is failure is not an option. And that's the way we have to treat this election.
Yeah, that was Gene Kranz.
Yes. So that's that's the mantra we got to chant is failure is not an option.
I agree.
Anyway, about the elections, I was sitting there talking about, even talking to some of the volunteers at the polling place, and they're sitting there saying, this didn't talk about voting, it talked about everything. Like I said, we need a decomputerization of a few things. Starting with elections, we don't need computers for elections. Paper ballots would do just fine. And, having that paper trail. Because a computer can be manipulated. And the thing is, I send a message to the vote riggers and the people vote multiple times. If the election is stolen, you're not only going to be looking for Hillary, you're going to be looking for them, too. I mean, because this guy in Texas, I think the director of elections in Texas who took away all the safeguards to guard against voter fraud.
Yes.
I mean, people are going to be looking for him. I can tell you that right now.
Well, he's got a bigger problem than that. Look at the first 6 months of Bill Clinton's first term in office, when all of his major supporters who had broken the law to get Bill Clinton that presidency, and they all started dying under mysterious circumstances. They called it Bill Clinton's house cleaning. And that's something that Hillary supporters who are willing to break the law need to realize, because they know they broke the law, because they could testify that Hillary broke the law. If Hillary steals that White House, there's a target painted on your forehead right now. Why do you think Eric Braverman is trying to get to Russia? He knows the reality of the person he was working for. And you can work yourself to death to get her into the White House. It's not going to buy you anything. If Hillary thinks you're a threat because of what you know, you will wind up dead in Fort Marcy Park.
Well, you ever seen the last scene in that movie Black Sheep? And the guy was sitting there saying about this guy who voted for the governor, incumbent governor, but actually she cheated. And she goes, "Yeah, I'm proud to say he's a voter." He just said, "Yep, he died in World War I when a Zeppelin landed on him." And and he goes, "Well, there's a perfectly good answer for this." And he turns to her chief of staff and he says, "Yep, she put us up to this." So, you know, and you know the thing is, like I say, when this election's over with, if Hillary does get in, you know, she's going to find this impossible to govern this country. I'll tell you that right now.
Yeah, she is.
Thank you, Mike.
All right, thank you very much. We're going to let you go and go to Dustin in New Jersey. Aloha, Dustin. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Oh, no, she'll know. Hi, Mike. She'll know how to govern because she'll have Senator Brown shirts out. You know, just like they smashed Trump's star up and they blocked George Washington Bridge over in New York, because I'm in New Jersey, and they also were at UC Berkeley blocking white people from crossing the bridge, the UC Berkeley. You know, only people of color were going to pass. So, you know, you people ain't seen nothing yet. You know, a vote against Hillary, you're voting against globalism. You know, vote for Trump. Even if you don't like Trump, you're voting against globalism. That's what the battle's against. Basically, this is globalism. You know, it's not just about
globalism and tyranny. Hillary's already out there saying that she needs to find a way to shut down the independent media so that only their paid professional liars are out there talking to the public to convince them about the war. She's going to claim she's going to end the Second Amendment with an executive order, which she actually legally can't do. But at this point, the degree of lawlessness that we're seeing coming out of the entire federal government, and especially from Hillary Clinton, she's going to try and rule with an iron fist. Whether she can physically, medically sustain that remains to be seen. But I'd rather not find out, what's going to happen if Hillary steals the White House, because it's going to be ugly and a lot of people are going to get hurt, a lot of people are going to die, and it's always going to be the wrong people who are forced to pay for these tyrannies in blood.
But Trump needs to, if Trump does win, he needs to just stay in the White House and send his people out there or drive around in a tank, Mike, because, you know, this is more than Hillary Clinton people. You know, this is like your previous caller, CIA, State Department, Pentagon, not just them, but outside sources. I mean, you're talking about a web of just murderers, crooks, and liars, and, he's going to be in some serious trouble. So I would probably suggest for him to either stay in the White House or be driven around in like an M1 Abrams, because they'll be gunning for him, Mike.
Well, they will be, but remember, John F. Kennedy's mistake was that he let the Secret Service talk him into removing the bulletproof plastic bubble from his limousine in Dallas, Texas. If he'd kept to the security protocols, he would have survived the assassination attempt. That they literally put him out there in the open. They did that little dogleg turn to slow down the motorcade and put it right past that book depository. Frankly, Kennedy should have seen it coming, which doesn't, in any way exonerate the guilt of those who actually killed him. But if you're the president, you go into that office knowing you're a target for somebody who doesn't like you. And that's just a reality, and that's why you have a Secret Service. And I would recommend strongly, if any of Trump's people are listening to this show, and I think they are, I think he needs to keep up that practice of having his own private security operating as a second buffer inside the Secret Service protective detail, because that Secret Service can't be trusted. They stood down when John F. Kennedy was assassinated. Indira Gandhi was assassinated by her protective detail. Everybody has a price and can be bought. And the only thing that guards against that is redundancy, multiple layers of defense. The other thing that we can all do is, if Trump succeeds in overcoming the election fraud and takes the White House, we make a big stink and we send a message to the CIA, to Israel, to the Clintons, to the Bushes, and tell them, if anything happens to Donald Trump, we know it was you. We're not going to fall for the crazed lone gunman in the book depository again. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. Take that, George W. Bush.
Exactly, and everybody should not be sitting down. They should be going to vote because, like I said, this is a vote against globalism. This is our last chance, people, because you see already the machinery working. You know, I mean, we ain't got. You know, this is it. You know, this is it, Mike.
Yeah, this is the last hurrah. This is our last chance to have a peaceful revolution. And again, going back to John F. Kennedy, if the peaceful revolution is made impossible, we know what the next step is going to be. And I don't want to see that. But at this point, it's not under my control anymore. Thank you for the phone call, Dustin. We're going to go to Kyle in Pennsylvania. Aloha. Kyle, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike. Well, what's on my mind is the destruction of the mainstream media has already begun. The Twitter, with Jack DeVries at the head of it, has lost stock shares from upwards of $53 to below $12. They tried to sell the company, I think about a month ago, and nobody was buying because it's already been.
They're having to let like 5,000 people go. They're having to let 5,000 people go because now everybody understands these corporate social media platforms are part of the problem. They were presented as a solution to democratize all of us and keep us in communication with each other. Then we find out they're just as filtered and censored as the corporate media. Of course, people aren't using them any longer.
Well, when they took funds from the public, they were sold to as a utility, as a public utility, much like power or water. That came out of Jack's mouth himself. He said, Twitter's going to be a public utility for the communication from person to person. But his banning of politically oppositional people, his limiting of free exchange of ideas has caused Twitter and its stocks to absolutely plummet.
Good. I hope they go out of business. I hope they go out of business and make way for another provider with more respect to the Bill of Rights. We have to take a break for commercials. Yeah, I'm going to hold you over the commercial break. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. We're talking with Kyle in Pennsylvania. Kyle, you had something else you wanted to share with us.
Yes, well, not only do we have the whole Twitter debacle, but the Daily Show, which, believe it or not, I think it's something like 73% of people under the age of 25 say they get their news from the Daily Show. The ratings are so low that there's a very good chance they're going to be canceled after the election. We have Glenn Beck and his treasonous self just took out a DIP loan, which is debtor in possessions, meaning he's pretty much putting up all of his possessions, his buildings, all of his equipment, trying to stay afloat because he's losing massive amounts of subscribers since he's going over to basically supporting Hillary.
Yeah.
CNN has cut their on-site or their on-location reporters by 48% because they're getting to the point where they're not getting the returns from the reporting that it's costing them to get the reporters there. So yeah, the absolute destruction of the mainstream media is
the corporate media. The corporate media. We call them the corporate media. They're not the mainstream anymore. Pardon me. We're the mainstream right here. We've got the lion's share of the audience. We have more people reading WhatReallyHappened.com, the website, than the readership of any big city newspaper. We've captured the audience. We have much more people. We have much more trust. And that's why I refuse to call those big TV networks and newspapers the mainstream anymore. They're not the mainstream. They're trying to pretend that they're the mainstream, but looking at their recent economic fortunes, it's very obvious their backers and their advertisers understand they're not the high ground anymore.
Once the big pharma companies realize that, hey, we're not getting our returns for advertising on CNN, MSNBC, and they're gone, that's pretty much, I think, 60 or 70% of their financing comes from drug companies advertising every new drug and vaccine under the drug.
That's 60 to 70% of their ad revenues, but you need to understand the corporations that are running these media outlets are running them at a loss, specifically because they rely on these media outlets to push the corporate government establishment point of view. And if Donald Trump overcomes the election fraud and takes the White House, it's going to be a seismic shock to that system because all these corporate owners are going to realize they're throwing money away for nothing. The corporate media outlets cannot control the mind of America any longer. They're going to put away their checkbooks, and all these talking heads are going to have to say goodbye to those $1 million paychecks.
Well, from what I understand, if Trump loses, his other alternative is to start a news outlet, pretty much bringing you guys out of the wood, out of the darkness, out of the internet, and onto a mainstream, or I should say, a corporate environment. My
understanding is that's going to happen anyway, because Donald Trump isn't running it himself. His son-in-law is. And it's going to be, right now the working title is Trump Media. And yeah, it's going to provide some real competition in broadcast. And I'm certainly going to send him a resume. So we got to take a break for our top of the hour station break. Thanks for the call, Kyle. Back with more phone calls after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. Hour number 2. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. And we've got some callers waiting on the line. But before I take the calls, I want to get this story on out there. There is apparently a move in California to disqualify the entire state from the 2016 elections. And the reasoning behind it is very simple. When California enacted Assembly Bill 1461, they created a situation that allows illegal aliens to vote in the elections. This erodes the value and worth of the votes of the legal citizens and denies legal citizens the full weight and power of their vote by making it impossible to identify legal versus illegal votes in the state of California. And they're making the argument that any state that has made it possible for the illegals to vote is cheating the legal voters. Yes, we know. That's what it's supposed to do. But by documenting the fact that this is cheating the legal voters, these states could literally find themselves disqualified. You'll never find a judge to go along with it. But it shows how contentious this issue of the illegal voters is becoming. If you are not a legal U.S. citizen, you are not supposed to vote. And every illegal citizen that votes is undermining your vote. And you need to keep that in mind. All right, let's go back to the phone calls. Clinton, Las Vegas, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind? Clint in Las Vegas, are you there? Going once, going twice. All right, let's switch over to Steve in California. Steve, are you there? Hello? Is anybody there?
Hello.
Hello. Who am I talking to?
This is Steve in California.
This is Steve in California. Okay, we had some confusion on the switchboard. What's on your mind?
Well, I sent you an email on, I went to an Eagle Forum meeting on Tuesday, and there was a guest speaker by the name of Diane Richards. Did you get that email I sent you yesterday?
I don't remember seeing it, but, I get hundreds of emails every day.
I know you do. Okay, she is an investigative journalist, editor of a very conservative newspaper, and she has a lot of good information. I sent you that. I think you might want to have her on the show. She spelled out, she kind of figured it out, and she's got some lawsuits pending now here in California, but she's figured out how they've done the electronic voting scheme and how they're doing this, and other tricks on the counts of the hand ballots. But it's really quite interesting. So if you get a chance, check that email out.
Okay.
Yeah, they stole election from her. But check that out, and I'd love to hook you up with her for maybe you can have a half an hour of her time. And I've talked to her already about your show, and she said, I'd love to talk about this, but check your email out and see if we can set this up.
All right, I'll take a look at it because, there is an issue out there. And by the way, if you remember the Collier brothers who wrote the book Vote Scam, they were motivated to write that book when they had an election stolen from them.
Yeah, I'm going to give you one little hint, though. Let's just say the gaming industry and the slot machines is very similar as how they're doing this scam.
Well, that's kind of interesting because in Las Vegas, those electronic gambling machines are subject to strict controls and constant inspections. No part of them is allowed to be secret. It has to be open. And if they're going to go to that level to make sure those electronic gambling machines are honest and open, why won't they do the same thing with our voting system?
Yeah, well, that's what she's going to tell you, where she found the violations, broken seals, all kinds of things. And like I said, she's got some pending litigation right now against the election boards because she's proven the fact that these machines were tampered with, and she figured it out. And there's a really neat equation she came up with. When she did the math, she showed a pattern, a clear pattern of how this is all working out, and it always works out in the same pattern every time. So I'd like her to, in her own words, share that with you and your listeners. It's really good. So if you get a chance, check the email, and we'll see if we can set this up.
What's her last name again? How do you spell it?
Richards, Richards, Diane Richards.
All right, I'll take a look for that.
Type her in, Diane Richards.
Oh, I got it right here. I got it right here. It just popped up. All right, well, thank you very much, Steve. Is Clint in Las Vegas still on the line? His audio was just cut. Okay, let's go to...
Okay, Mike?
Yeah, Clint, you there?
Mike?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, what's on your mind?
Okay, I got two things. One, these two polls I found. I just emailed you to them. There's two of them. One's a Newsmax poll. 400,000 people voted. 80% Trump, 20% Hillary. And a second one was this guy from David Hill, and he had over 1.1 million votes. It's 82% Donald Trump and 10.8% Hillary, and Johnson and Stein got the rest. And here's the kicker. It was an all-female poll.
Oh, now that is interesting here. We're going to take a second to do a shout-out to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining our network. And we're taking phone calls. We're talking about the obvious election fraud that's out there. Clint, do you have anything else?
Yeah, I saw it on WikiLeaks email about her staff. In fact, Drudge has a picture of it. I think it's still up. It was an hour ago, where Hillary's a slush. It said her staff said, clearly to sober her up, and it's got a bunch of pictures of her. Apparently she drinks like a fish.
Yeah, I've had this picture actually for a while, and I've actually got another picture of her where she looks even more plastered, but she's got to be very, very careful because some of the medications she's got to be on do not work well with alcohol, and we'll be talking about that a little bit further in the show, okay?
Yeah, but Trump's never had a drink in his life, so he's...
Well, I tend to have the same opinion as Harry S. Truman. There's only one thing worse than a man who drinks, and that's one who doesn't.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I wish I had never had. It would save me a lot of problems. Okay, I'll catch you later, Mike.
All right, well, in wine there is truth. Mary in New Jersey, aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Michael. I think... Well, just responding to the last guy, I think I heard that Donald Trump's brother was an alcoholic, and that's part of the reason.
Could be.
Anyhow, I wanted to say of all the evilness, and part of Trump's goodness, I have to remind, he went out down in the flooding, which was worse than Katrina, I heard, just, a month ago?
Yes.
He personally went down there and handed out food and supplies to people. I mean, as compared to Hillary, who kept 97% of the money that was supposed to go to Haiti and then only gave it out to friends who didn't really build anything useful. And they are hurting right now. Our country, there's like 5 Army helicopters, because that guy that is from Curves, he went down there. Mm-hmm. And InfoWars did do a report on that. One of the reporters, Joe Biggs, went with him. And it's a mess. It looks like a bomb, especially up in the hills. They will not fly anybody out for medical care. One guy came in, and he walked, I think, 30 miles. And then he got into the clinic. They started treating him, and they called them back from the plane because they went out to get supplies. And he threw up blood and just died. So, but I did want to say about all of her disgustingness, which I didn't know all of this, but as you research, Hillary goes way back when they first were governor, when they were first, her husband was first governor in Arkansas. Mm-hmm. That factor 8 scandal where thousands of people died as of 1997, I think.
Yeah.
30,000. They were personally involved with that. They got that started. The Clintons offered the prisoners money. They knew they were sick with HIV and hepatitis.
Yes.
They sold it to Canada and to England. And
they made a lot of people very, very sick. But they got money for it, and that makes it okay.
And when they were stopped from doing that, when that became known, then they started selling it to other countries. Okay, and then also talk about Bill raping someone, but also Hillary raped some young girls, and these stories have been documented. There's one with the pictures somebody said they're going to put out soon, a 7-year-old, a 9-year-old that she got from special programs.
Okay, may I hang on? I need to put out a word of caution here. Right now, Hillary's people, and by the way, if you can't get into my website, it's not you. Hillary's Tantrum Squad is really taking a sledgehammer to my server to try and keep this stuff from getting on out. So that's just the way they behave. And in a way, it validates everything that we're saying about them. So they're just thrashing around over there. But we need to be very careful because right now, Hillary's campaign is desperate to find a way to be able to cast doubt on all of this dirt that's coming on out. And so they're looking for a way to poison the well, and that's a propaganda term by which if everybody has got all this evidence of wrongdoing, you insert one provably false item in there, and after everybody gets it and buys into it, takes a drink of it, then you discredit it, and you use that to say, well, then the rest of this stuff is equally nonsense. And it's a very old propaganda tactic. They tried to use it during the House Select Committee on Assassinations with the poison umbrella gun. They used it during Jim Garrison's trial against Clay Shaw with the guy who waited to get on the witness stand to say that he had to fingerprint his own daughter every night to make sure that she wasn't being swapped. And it's a very old, very common propaganda technique, and it doesn't work if people understand that's what's going on. So as tantalizing as... Hang on, please, Mary. As tantalizing as some of these more extreme scandals sound, we must be very cautious and only work with what we know is documented from multiple sources and not get on out there and say that Hillary Clinton was having sex on a flying saucer with somebody wearing spandex and a beehive hairdo.
Well, I didn't say on the flying
No,
saucer.
I know that, but I'm just saying we need to be very cautious these next 2 weeks because Hillary's people are independent. Yeah, go ahead. Finish up.
I will say less outrageous. Well, the guns in the Iran-Contra when Reagan was president and Bush was vice president, and the guns were traced back being manufactured. Well, they were connected to that Iran-Contra, bringing drugs into the country. And Benghazi, we all know about, or at least a lot of people know about. All the killing going on in Syria, for heaven's sakes, and bringing thousands of these, well, she says they're Syrians. They're not really Syrians, but she said she's going to open the floodgates. She said this herself. She said that she's going to raise, I saw one of her speeches. She said she's going to raise taxes on the middle class. She's, what else did she say? She's just, and she's going to pass TPP, TPP. And just all of this, and not giving relief to Haiti, and her connection to Byrd, who was her mentor, the ex-senator who was in Senate, the Ku Klux Klan leader, High Poopa, whatever he was. I'm just saying it goes on and on. This is all of her experience. It's all crooked, and it's all bad.
Well, there used to be a joke going on about Bill and Hillary, reminiscing about their life together, and Bill Clinton saying, just imagine what our lives would be like if I hadn't gone into politics, and you were the wife of a guy pumping gas in Little Rock, Arkansas, and Hillary said, no, you'd be pumping gas in Little Rock, Arkansas. I'd still be the wife of the president.
Because she's ambitious. And this new person who knew Bill Clinton, she wrote The Other Woman. She knew Bill Clinton since she was 11, he was 12. She grew up, went to high school with him. They had an affair. They had an affair going on, according to her, even after he was in the White House. And then he asked her one day, Hillary and I have to have a child to make our relationship look legitimate. And she said, well, maybe have sex with her,
Well, what's really weird, of course, is that Bill Clinton went out and he had a son by that prostitute, and Hillary got knocked up by Webb Hubbell, and that's where Chelsea came from.
Yes. Oh, okay. So that's right. Bill never even had, I guess that's how they had their kids. So anyhow, it's so, and I'm still a registered Democrat. Not that I've voted Democrat for a while, but I know they're both involved. They are, and I saw, my son showed me this movie, JFK 2, ... The Bush Connection.
Yes.
This ties so much together. It's right on YouTube,
Well, again, what I keep telling everybody that you have to keep in mind, wars and assassinations do not happen for just one reason. What it is you'll have a group of people who have different agendas, but all of them can be improved by the war or the assassination. And so you'll have multiple players, which gives them all plausible deniability when people are saying, who's responsible for the assassination of John F. Kennedy? It was no one individual or agency. Israel was involved because John F. Kennedy didn't want them to get nuclear weapons. The Texas oil billionaires were involved because of the oil depletion allowance. The CIA was involved because of the Bay of Pigs. The mafia was involved because they felt John Kennedy betrayed them after they helped him steal the election from Richard Nixon. The Federal Reserve was in on it because of Executive Order 11110. And anytime anybody gets too close to one of the players, they'll dangle a little clue that leads off in the other direction to keep everybody caroming around between the various players and never getting any traction.
Yeah, did you see that video that I'm talking about, or that movie?
No, I haven't. These days, I'm not spending a lot of time on Kennedy.
They take some of the stuff that was from, well, I'm in the process of moving, so we didn't have much to do up in the new house, and my son just set up this CD for me to watch, because, there was not any connection to the internet or anything. Mm-hmm. So, it was amazing watching it. It takes stuff from the one that was in the 80s, and it ties a lot of new stuff. And it's kind of gory because it shows, it even shows, I'm not finished, Chris. It even shows autopsy.
Oh, okay. Mary, I've given you a lot of time on the line here.
Okay, thank you.
All right, I need to let you go. Let's go to Mike in Alberta. Thank you for waiting so patiently. What's on your mind?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
I wanted to mention, I read on your site about Hillary's use of amphetamines, possibly.
Yes.
And it really does look like that might be the case with her. If she's drinking a lot, that's to sort of take the edge off it, and she needs to have all these naps all the time. If she does get in, I think you're going to see that she's in bed a lot of the time of her presidency. If that's the case, if she is actually taking them.
I think what's going to happen, she just wants the glory of being the first woman president of the United States, and I think if she steals the White House, she'll go through the inauguration, and then probably within the first 6 months, she'll be forced to step down, or she'll be taken out by the 25th Amendment, and Tim Kaine will take over for her.
Yeah, that's probably what's going to happen. Anyway, that's all I had to say.
All right, well, thank you very much. And we're going to start with Francis in North Carolina, but we are coming up on a commercial break, and I'm probably going to have to take you through the commercial. So go ahead. What's on your mind?
Hello, hello and aloha.
Aloha, Nui Nui.
This is probably going to be dragged over, yes, but in all these commentary I've been hearing about the taxing the middle class and so forth, not to mention so much percentage of the upper echelon or whatever have you and so forth ad nauseum, I'm wondering about something. In all the commentary I've been hearing politically and as well as out in the field, as it were, with every person.
Okay, I'm going to put you on hold here. Hold that thought. We're going to come right back to this after these words from our sponsors. Aloha, America. Pardon me. Welcome back to the show. And Francis in North Carolina, would you please pick up where you left off?
Indeed. I did do a lousy setup for that one, I'll tell you what. But anyway, my question is this, and a general bone to pick with the general public as well as whomever, wherever, whatever. In addressing the middle class and who's being taxed this way and that way, as well as the upper class, or whatever you want to call it, I keep hearing people talk about that, and I'm missing one part that no one has addressed at all.
Mm-hmm.
Is what I would refer to as if they're able to work, great. If not, then they're basically out of work. Is called the lower class or so-called working poor that are unable to find work for who knows what reason, if it's medical, legitimately, or whatever have you, or just do not care to bother to find work and are just simply existing. And the question is about addressing that, and I've not heard one politician, I don't care who it is, address that issue for helping those that are considered the working poor or not at all, that are either homeless or whatever have you, getting them back on their feet. I've not heard one.
You need to understand that our political leadership wants us all to be working poor. They don't want a middle class. That's why Hillary's out there saying, we're going to tax that middle class, like we're the middle class of the bad guys here. But if you look at history, every tyranny in history destroys the middle class, because it is from the middle class that opposition to tyranny and oligarchy springs. During the French revolutions, the opposition to the nobility and the royalty came from the middle class, from the bar owners, from the small manufacturers and so forth. Same thing with the American Revolution. The middle class has got the extra disposable income that they can say, we want to bring a change to our situation here. Now, the Soviet Union lasted for as long as they did because they designed an economic political system where there could be no middle class. It was simply designed out. They still collapsed eventually. And what we're seeing in this country is a war on the middle class. No, our political leadership wants us all working poor, working 12 hours a day, 6 days a week, and just turning over all our money to corporations and politicians. That's what they want. It's a return to feudalism.
Well, I get that part. But the question is, who is even bothering to raise up the people that are below that level, that are considered a useless party or whatever, useless leader or whatever terminology you want to use, that is basically being discarded along the ditch or the curb of the street, for that matter. What about them?
Well,
I'm still not hearing it.
Well, you're not going to, because our political system actually finds the homeless people on the streets to be of use, because it scares what's left of the middle class and lower middle class into obedience. If you don't do as you're told, you're going to wind up looking just like them. So the homeless are being used as an object lesson of what's going to happen to you if you refuse to do as you're told by the one percenters.
And there's a real big problem, and people haven't woke up by now by seeing what they're seeing out on the street in general, then they're never going to wake up, because it's right in their face of how they're being ringed by the so-called upper echelon, elite, superior class, or whatever you want to call it. They're nothing more than a bunch of sad excuses of human beings, for that matter.
Well,
not being polite about it.
Most of us are aware that we're being reamed by the government. Government's the most expensive thing we're ever going to be forced to buy, and yet we're certainly not getting value for money. What has held the American people in place was this illusion that somehow or other we voted to have this happen. We voted to be slapped upside of the head. We voted for our children to be killed and crippled in wars of conquest. We voted for our wealth to be stripped away and given to Wall Street. But with this election, that illusion is gone. And with it, we withdraw our consent to govern.
Well, you know, it's interesting you happen to mention that because, let's see, how many decades of time has people been going to the poll to vote? And yet, what happened?
Nothing ever changes. Hey, if voting could really change things, it would have been declared illegal decades ago.
I'm not.
Okay,
we
gotta let you go. Thank you very much for the phone call. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. And before I go back to the phones here, I got to put out a consumer warning, especially with the economy the way it is, and with the government looking the other way at any kind of scam or fraud from Wall Street on down to every level. You have to be on your guard. And Claire just got caught in one having to do with a supposed anti-aging cream. It's called Aurora Cream. And she accepted the free sample once for $35 shipping and handling. Well, all of a sudden, they're sending these things once a month and hitting her credit card for close to $200, which she did not sign up for. And I went on out and I did Aurora Cream scam in Google, and I got a huge number of hits. So, folks, you got to be really careful. And I would suggest strongly that anytime you're looking at any kind of an offer coming off of TV or a magazine or whatever, take the company name, type it into a search engine, and then follow it with scam or fraud. Because you have to protect yourself. The government's not going to protect you. The government gets a piece of the action when the scammers get your money. They're on the scammer's side. They're not on your side. All righty, let's see. I'm not sure. Okay, John in Barbados. Aloha, John. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Aloha, Michael. Okay. I now volunteer to be your radio voice until a man called Horse is better.
Yeah, well, I'm better today than I was yesterday, and I imagine by Monday I'll be back to normal. Claire's a little upset because in addition to being her technician for her choir, I'm also one of her baritones. And, I'm obviously not in a condition to be part of this Sunday's festivities, as it were.
Well, I've been following, as you know, your election very carefully, and I've been looking at all the WikiLeaks revelations, the Justice Department releases, and the FBI releases. But they're still not coming across with these 33,000. Now, I understand that someone has the 33,000, probably the NSA, but who knows who's going to leak them first?
Well, I don't want to speculate, and I'm frankly sick and tired of all these hints that this is going to happen, that this is coming. I'm not interested in predictions about what's going to be released next week. I want to know what's out there right now today that we can look at, and otherwise, I'm not interested.
Okay, Mike. Well, I mean, more important, I'm getting back to the situation in the Middle East, particularly Syria. Now, the air forces of the Syrian Arab Army and the Russians have now upped their game, and it looks like the Kuznetsov, when it arrives on the east coast of Syria, will be with them to increase the number of sorties. And it looks like they're racing to get this thing done before November 8th. I don't know, but that's the feeling I get, that they really are going to go after Aleppo and probably Raqqa before November 8th and the election takes place in America.
Well, they better move on Aleppo because Russia and Syria just uncorked on them in a big way. And Aleppo may be out of play by the start of next week.
Well, if it is, as I say, it looks to me that they'll move on Raqqa then.
Yes.
Which is the so-called headquarters of ISIS. And with the addition of the aircraft on board the Kuznetsov, plus those in Haimin, whatever it's called, near Tartus, the Russian airbase there, which now seems to be permanent, they can really make a huge difference. Plus, of course, they've got the ancillary ships with all those Caliber cruise missiles on board. So they can really make a dent in ISIS within a very short space of time.
Yeah, they can. I think the only thing that's holding Russia and Syria back is the desire to not give the United States an excuse to escalate the situation. And even as flimsy as the pretexts have been coming from the U.S., Russia knows that the U.S. will move on anything they can make up.
Well, I think we've been told so many things by America, which turned out to be total garbage.
Well, that's why nobody's believing anything the U.S. government or the corporate media has to say anymore, because the story is constantly changing. And like I've been saying all along, the essence of a good propaganda campaign against the public is it has to have a strong sense of a continuous narrative that makes sense. And where our government really went badly, badly wrong is instead of having an organized, formal propaganda ministry, as it were, they're relying on ad agencies and public relations firms to do this work, and they are institutionally not capable of thinking beyond 30 seconds, 60 seconds, maybe a week sales campaign, and after that the slate is wiped and they're off selling something completely unrelated. There is no continuity in the propaganda, and that's one of the major reasons that people are seeing through it, and it's all falling apart.
Well, I'm as you know, engaged in watching with anticipation the election campaign as the Hillary campaign falls apart from all the revelations, but nothing seems to happen. It's increasing the support for Trump, and Hillary's support is collapsing, but nothing really seems to be happening. I mean, these people are committing crimes.
Yes, that's exactly right. It's a criminal government. And anybody who thinks this government is going to correct itself, you're living in a dream world. We went past that stage decades ago. It's an oligarchy. Its only concern is more wealth and power for itself. We're going to have to just sit here, pull back, not throw any more of our money or children into this failed state, and let it destroy itself. And then we've got to be very careful about how we set up the next one.
Yeah. Well, I think your assessment that if Hillary does steal it, there'll be absolutely zero cooperation with the federal government, I think that will, without a doubt, take place. But I fear that it will be more hot, if you like, than that. I think it will develop into, things that can go wrong.
I don't want to see that, but at this point, we obviously cannot rule out a bloody revolution. Listen, John, I need to let you go because we
still got one more point to make.
Mike. Real quick, make it quick.
Okay, if we're going to burn these prostitutes and correspondents at the stake, we should use unleaded petrol, because we don't want to poison the little darlings.
Well, petroleum itself is a carcinogen. Little something they never mentioned to you about that. All right, John, we're going to let you go, and we're going to get to Chris in Las Vegas. Chris, thank you for waiting so patiently. What's on your mind?
Well, Michael, I have observed a very insidious pattern, practice, and custom perpetrated apparently by the kill switch operators of the so-called federalist government of running what one might be perceived as a random sequence interrupter, disconnecting your signal from RBN, and I've also observed the same thing on other channels, such as the Micro Effect channel in particular. and there seemed to be a random time sequence that repeats with, you'd have to follow it for a while to define the pattern, but somewhere between 2 to 5 minute, generally, interruptions interspersed with a couple minutes one way or the other, disconnecting the signal and causing you to reload in order to hear the conversations that are going on the show.
There's two things to consider. One is we are a very popular show, and there are a lot of people trying to get on there. And certainly with the issue with BAM User TV, there's an upper limit on how many streams it will support. But yes, there's a lot of computer hacking going on by Hillary's people to try and shut things down. They're constantly trying to overload my server. We actually caught a serious attack to break into it and mess up the server code. These people think playing dirty is their divine right.
Well, having the former head of DARPA running Google, who has I think a strong interest in Android and likely some other telephone services, gives a line of connectivity that cannot be ignored, that they may have the insidious purpose of disconnecting. And of course, Joe Biden and his internet kill switch and cyber terrorism facade, false information, was likely playing into the same things along with the Hillary camp and other insidious government agents and actors acting outside scope, sphere, and color of law. But thank you so very much, Michael.
All right, well, thank you. And let's switch over to Andy in Texas. Aloha, Andy. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Aloha, Michael. Hey, there's no doubt that this criminal election is going on here. I mean, what is going on is criminal. We've got this election cycle of the mainstream media, we call it the corporate media. They are totally in the pants of Hillary Clinton and whatnot. But
that's a disgusting image. Yeah. I was already feeling sick enough, and you have to lay that one on me.
Shake it off. Yeah. No, but having said that, I mean, you see all of these laws being broken and all these rules that this woman's getting away with and stuff. Well, and my question to you is, and maybe you don't have an answer for it, but how do us little people, us nobodies, how do we continue to run through life obeying these laws and just believing that we have to be lawful when we can see that the corporate structure is lawless? How do we do that?
Well, that's a choice everybody is going to have to make for themselves, whether they're going to go on obeying the laws when the laws are clearly not uniform across our entire nation. Everybody has to make that individual choice. Are we going to obey a government that is clearly illegal, unconstitutional, and illegitimate? And I think the most important question right now, for those of us who are not lucky enough to have children, it's easy to say, well, I'm not going to be around all that much longer anyway. I'm just going to go along to get along. But for people who are fortunate enough to have children, you need to look at them and just really think what their lives are going to be like if you leave this nation as it is right now to them, for them to live in. What is their life going to be like? And it's obviously not going to be very, very pleasant.
Well, and I'm fortunate to have 4 children, and I've said before on other talk shows that I've talked on that had I known what I know now, I wouldn't have brought them 4 children in this country. This is just a tyrannical country, and I really wish that I had really rethink that at the time and been smarter enough not to do so. But so I mean, here we are in a country where they've got codes and ordinances that actually tell you how long your grass can be in your yard and tell you how much junk you can have on your property and whether your roof is proper or not, or whether you can have a fireplace and stuff. I mean, this is just far beyond the Constitution, and I'm a constitutionalist.
Of course they are.
I'm like,
I mean, Adolf Hitler did not go around to the German people and tell them they couldn't collect rain on their own property. I mean, that we've gone way, way past the abuses of the Third Reich here. And the Fourth Reich is alive and well and living in Washington, D.C. We have concentration camps. We have the use of torture. We have a targeted religious minority that's being scapegoated for everything that's going on. We have uncontrolled spying on all the citizens. The only thing that's missing are the really good-looking uniforms, and we'd be there.
Well, and you know what, Mike? Keep up the good fight. I mean, without people like you, there wouldn't be people like me. So I appreciate you, bro.
All right, well, thank you very much for the kind words. We're going to switch over to Janet in Kansas. Aloha, Janet. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hello?
Hello, you're on the air.
Hello. Oh, I was wanting to talk to you about, you have just a recent caller in there. What happens to all of these poor people? Well, what happens to them is they're living under bridges right now.
Yes.
Millions of them are.
Yes.
And that in capitalism is about exploitation and extraction of wealth from wherever you can get it.
Well, I would disagree with that. I would disagree with that in that the unfettered extraction of wealth from the poor to give to the rich is actually fascism. And that's where we are right now.
Oh, yes.
Okay, now...
I agree with you.
Okay.
However, I also think that once you become... We are basically reduced to economic ciphers, either a debit or a credit.
Yes.
And if you cannot consume, you are worthless. And you
No. If you cannot borrow, you are worthless.
Well, that's one way of consuming is borrowing.
Yeah, but you see, if you go down to the shopping mall and you buy something and you pay cash, you know, they're going to scowl. That's not the way they want this set up. They want you going back into debt slavery to the bankers to have what you want in your life. And this idea that you're going to pay cash for something means that you're free and clear of the bankers, and that's definitely not what they want.
Well, I mean, we as consumers are losing, are maxing out on the debt.
I think consumers who are not being careful are maxing out. I know a lot of Americans, and Claire and I are certainly on that same one. We're paying down our credit cards. We're getting out of debt. We're going without things. We don't wear nice, fancy, fine clothing and go out to dinner. We're driving a going on 17-year-old car because it's more important for us to break free of the banker's slavery than it is to keep up with the Joneses next door, who have a very fine lifestyle and they're basically the bank owns their souls.
And they're debt slaves. Yes, they are. And they have to work 2 or 3 jobs or whatever.
Yes.
That, I honestly believe that...
Okay, well, Janet, we're going to have to let you go. I'm sorry, we hit a commercial break, and we got other callers waiting on the line. I have to give them their turn. So we'll be back after these few words. Aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. We're going to go back to the phones. Glenn in Philadelphia. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hello, Mike. I have a consumer scam complication for you. Virtually anything Claire might purchase that purports to provide beauty enhancement could hope to have only the most negligible of effects.
Yeah, I was getting emails about that, and I was telling Claire, you don't need this stuff. You still look like the day I married you and everything, but, she's a girl, and, she likes her bling, and she does like a little bit of makeup, and we have to be very, very careful about that, if you remember that story about the formaldehyde.
Putting Claire up against these types of products just isn't fair at all.
Well, I have to sort of go along with it, or, she thinks I don't love her. No. What can I tell you?
Well, no. Well, that's supposed to be, this is all supposed to be flattery. See, what could these products possibly hope to achieve for Claire? There's just no room to move.
Well, they're there to achieve wealth for the people who put them on out there, and that's a big problem with our society as a whole. All these entities out there telling our young people, you're not what you could be. But you can if you just send in your money and buy this bottle of goop and pour it all over you. I call it the dimple wash mentality. Anyway, anything else?
All right. No, I'm not what I could be, but if they keep pissing me off, I'll get there. All right, take care, Mike.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to switch over to Jerry in Saskatchewan. Aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, how's it going, Mike?
You're doing fine.
Excellent to hear. Yeah, I committed a big thought crime today. I was looking through those emails on WikiLeaks, right?
Yes.
Just looking for the SWAT unit busted with their Darth Vader uniforms and MP5s right now. Hope they don't come rushing in here. So I typed in George Soros in the Podesta search box, right?
Yes.
I see this big header. It says, what's the difference between a German and a shopping cart? I was like, what the heck? So I clicked it open. It says, a shopping cart has a mind of its own. Is that a joke? I don't get it. But anyway.
Well, I do, actually.
Okay. Well, you could explain it. The email is a huge long one. It has a laundry list of all the top Jewish names in America and other 0.27% of the population, but they yield 50% of the top smartest people in the world. And you should see this email. It's crazy. They're bragging how they're...
You know, what's really interesting is going back and looking at the Black Lives Matter and screaming about reparations for slavery and everything, and they're out there just angry at the white people. They need to go look at who owned all those slave ships that brought their ancestors to this country, because it's a very narrow, specific group of individuals. If they want to be angry at somebody over slavery, that's who they should be looking at.
Yeah, but we're being enslaved by 0.27%. Not even 1%, 2.27% is enslaving all of us whites, all the whites are being enslaved by these Ashkenazi Jews. That, like William Shatner, Wolf Blitzer.
Well, wait a minute. Okay, Bill Shatner's an actor. He's not out to enslave people. Okay, and, let's not just cast all Ashkenazi Jews as tyrants and enslavers. Some of them are just goofballs, like my first wife. Okay, we got to take a break for station identification, and we'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show, hour number 3. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443, and we're going to go back to the phones. Chris in Florida, thank you for waiting all this time. What's on your mind today?
First off, Mike, quick question. What was the name of that court, I believe you mentioned, that says that that China has jurisdiction over the South China Sea? I think it was from the 1940s.
The Cairo Convention, I think it was called.
Okay, that's what I thought. All right. Well, getting back to the two callers past, in the court of public opinion, there's a false flag attack being conducted by self-described progressives against fascism that in this country goes under the name of capitalism. Of course, when you have a corporate currency, that's the epitome of fascism.
Okay, now I have to hit the brakes here right now, because capitalism and fascism are not the same thing. There are 3 fundamental economic systems in use throughout history, and let me give you a couple of definitions. Capitalism is a system in which if you make money, you get to keep it. If you lose money, you are responsible for that debt, because freedom means not only the freedom to succeed, but the freedom to fail and the responsibility to accept either outcome. That's capitalism. Under socialism, if you make money, it is taxed away from you for the betterment of society. If you lose money, society is taxed to cover the losses so you can pick up and start again. That's socialism. Fascism is a system in which if you make money, you are allowed to keep it. If you lose money, society is taxed to cover the losses. And that's where the United States is right now with TARP and bailout and all this other nonsense going on. We stopped being a capitalist nation decades ago. And one of the big lies that the American people are struggling with right now is they're being told that opposition to fascism equals opposition to capitalism, and that is simply not true. When the Occupy Wall Street people were out there protesting, they were protesting against fascism and protesting for a return to capitalism. Okay? Because capitalism is a good balance between the two systems. And yes, capitalism is subject to abuses, but certainly not the open abuses we see under fascism.
Sure, I agree with all that. And capitalism, the definition is a way of organizing an economy so that the things that are used to make and transport products, such as land, oil, factory, ships, etc., are owned by individual people and companies rather than by the government. And when we have Title 12 of the U.S. Code, Section 411, says Federal Reserve notes are obligations of the United States to the Federal Reserve, which of course is privately owned,
yes,
and payable in lawful money. So that, by virtue of the currency we use, we are fascist. So answers that we can find are by promoting and participating in equitable commerce media like public usury-free community currencies, time banks, barter networks, cooperatives, swap shops, and community gardens. So
well, we could just go back to the economic system our nation started with, which was a system where the government managed the public currency as a public utility, and Congress was given the authority by the Constitution to coin the money, because the money was actually the physical metal, and the paper notes were just claim checks for convenience sake. And the government would coin up a certain amount of money. They would spend it into circulation to buy what the government needed. The money would flow through commerce without accruing any interest. And at the end of the cycle, the government would tax that money back in the same amount to balance the books. And that's a system that worked very well for the American nation. It worked very well for the American people. It's what allowed the new United States of America to very rapidly become a world economic power. And that's why all of the European banking families, which have been playing their little private central bank games for, well, back then 100 years or so, got very, very nervous about it. But that system does work, and we need to go back to it. But unfortunately, the bankers literally believe that nobody should be allowed to exist who is not in debt to the bankers. And if you go back and you look at All Wars Are Bankers' Wars, the text article is linked at the top of the page. It basically is the retelling of American history as a war between those who think that governments and people should provide their own money for commerce, and the private central bankers who are insisting that only they be allowed to print up ink and paper and loan it out to the world at interest in order to exert control over them. Private central banking is not about economics. It's not even about banking. It is a system of governance. And it's no more legitimate a system of governance than rule by divine right or rule by slavery. And like those former failed systems, it only works as long as the population is brainwashed into thinking this is the only way the world can operate. And that's why when the Federal Reserve was created, our public schools stopped teaching our kids about King George III's Currency Act, which was the real cause of the American Revolution. Because King George III tried to bring the colonies under private central banking by ordering all commerce in the colonies to use banknotes borrowed at interest from the Bank of England. And that's what triggered the revolution.
Right, yeah, as you know, Ben Franklin's memoirs.
Yes.
Currency Act 1764. Well, we would agree that fiat currency, which is state mandated, state decreed, that's the definition of fiat money, is a bad idea. To have one currency that is required and no other private, currencies. If you and I want to do business, we have to use the state-mandated currency. Well, that isn't true currently. A lot of people believe it is, and that for some reason they think community currencies have been attacked, where I don't know of any where there's been persecution. But fiat.
Well, there's one area where it was, and before I get into that, I do want to shout out to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining our network. We're talking about economics and currency, and you are right. By and large, people can use whatever currency they want to conduct their business. Whether it's silver coins, gold coins, white seashells, whatever they want to do. When you look at the front of a Federal Reserve note, it says, this note is legal tender for all debts public and private. The word only is not in there. Okay? And a lot of communities have what they call trade dollars. I got a whole collection of them to hammer home the point, the Catalina dollar, the Maui dollar, and so forth and so on. The only time one of these alternative currencies has come under attack was when the Liberty dollar put Ron Paul's face on one of their coins and apparently upset the delicate, fragile ego of George W. Bush, who sent the Treasury Department in there to shut down the Liberty dollar, confiscate all their silver and gold, and lock up Bernard von Nothaus, who was the coinage architect, under this idea that because they used the word dollar, it represented counterfeiting. Now, the dollar is not a trademarked U.S. term. Other nations use the word dollar. Zimbabwe didn't. It's basically derived from Thaler in Germany, where the silver mines of Thaler, Germany would sell their silver in round coins of uniform weight and shape. And that was the beginning of the idea of a recognized unit of value as a currency. So finally, the U.S. government backed off and said, yeah, it wasn't really counterfeiting. There was no way you could look at a Liberty dollar or a Liberty coin or the paper notes that were being issued and confuse them for the U.S. currency. It was just harassment. And today we see the Federal Reserve is trying to find some way they can shut down virtual currencies like Bitcoin, because they understand if there is the possibility of the people moving to a non-interest-bearing, value-based currency, they're going to go there. Because they understand as long as they use that Federal Reserve note, the privately owned Federal Reserve is getting a piece of their action. Whatever you work, they get profit. They make the money off of your work. And that is, of course, the whole idea of slavery, is you work, they get the wealth from it.
Right. Yeah, well, almost all community currencies are denominated in time. They're called hours most often. You know, like Ithaca hour is the most modern pioneering example that was started in 91, but there's quite a few others.
Yeah, well, they're denominated in different things. And again, I'm trying to look through my little box of props here. At the Maui dollar and the Catalina dollar, and they're denominated as dollars, and they're equivalent in value. And they were basically designed to boost local trade as opposed to buying from outside. But there are alternative currencies. I used to have a stack of these Lynchburg notes that were printed during the Civil War. They were accepted. And during the Depression of the 1930s, there were communities in America that didn't trust the Federal Reserve paper dollars anymore, and they started issuing their own internal currencies.
Right, over 3,000 during the first Great Depression in the 30s.
Yes.
Well, you know, because productivity is limited by time alone, it's virtually unlimited. So I don't believe it should be limited by any commodity or even a basket of commodities. If the currency is publicly accountable, as I mentioned, I can't stress enough, it's publicly accountable as our community currencies, our time banks, our cooperatives, and it's not privately owned or unaccountable like the Federal Reserve, then because the money system has to grow with productivity, I don't believe it should be limited.
Well, you know, it's funny you should say that, because when the Nazis shut down the private central bank imposed on Germany by the Treaty of Versailles, and they set up a state bank and a new currency. That currency was denominated as an hour of labor. And even though one person's labor may actually be worth another person, more than another person. For example, a bricklayer's hour of labor is not going to be worth an hour of a doctor's labor. But despite that disparity, it did work. And it was the foundation of the German miracle, which is why the rest of the world, still enslaved to private central banks, ginned up World War II to smash that system. But any commodity that's going to grow with the population would work. I wrote an article a while back about a hypothetical currency called the electro, which was based on a kilowatt hour of electricity that was tokenized and used as a monetary unit. And that would certainly work as well. And it would be decentralized. There wouldn't be a private central bank issuing it. Anybody creating electricity is creating wealth. Anybody using electricity is spending that wealth. It really is, it's got a lot of advantages to it. But remember, the goal of the private central banks is to maintain a monopoly where you are forced to use their currency, borrowed at interest, in order to make you their slave. That's what it's all about. They know that these pieces, they know these pieces of paper and ink are absolutely worthless. The item of value is your sense of indebtedness to them.
Yes, well, you know, that's why I don't believe that a gold or silver or any commodity or basket of commodities would keep up with human productivity, especially if technology increases. And because fiat currency, fiat means it doesn't mean paper, as many people seem to agree or seem to believe. It means by official decree. So even gold and silver in our past has been fiat currency. And usually
No. The definition of a fiat currency is when a government comes on out with a piece of ink and paper and says, this is now worth so much in silver and gold. And when you're dealing with silver and gold, It's not the coin that's the money, it's the metal content. You can melt it down, hammer it around, change it all over, it's still worth as much. Any commodity-based monetary system is going to be superior to this fictional money being created out of thin air by the Federal Reserve. Anyway, listen, I need to let you go. We got a bunch of callers on the line, and I got to give everybody their fair shot, so thank you very much. We're going to switch over to Ed in Dallas. Aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hello there, Michael. How are you?
Well, I'm getting better.
Well, listen, I wanted to bring up something that probably everybody has probably thought about before, but not really in a lot of depth. You know, the bankers or anybody cannot do anything unless they have an enforcement arm in order to make good on what they're trying to do, right? And so the bankers or anybody, government, I don't care who it is, has got their enforcement arm. And the enforcement arm of the bankers is the actual I call them the sentinels of the door. You know, they watch the door, and they are, of course, the solicitors or attorneys of this country. They're the ones that's holding everything where it's, you know, where they want it. And so I have been having great success working with the attorneys who deal with whatever the issue is directly. In other words, whenever you find, like, say, let's give you an example. If you got a statute and you know that for a fact that it's unconstitutional, then you go find the attorneys who are responsible for taking care and writing that statute and protecting, like for example, the attorneys that I'm dealing with are the ones who are protecting the cities and all their everything. You know, they represent the cities around the surrounding areas of Dallas. And I found one attorney firm, believe it or not, that almost represents every single city in this whole metroplex. And so it makes it real easy for you to deal with one firm.
Okay, well, you need to back up a bit. You need to back up a bit. Okay, because there's a Supreme Court decision from the very beginnings of our country, Marbury versus Madison, which says any laws repugnant to the Constitution are automatically null and void. You don't need to go back to court and get a decision. You just go on in and say, I refuse to obey.
That's not what I'm talking about.
Okay, well, I'm not sure what you're talking about. You need to get to your point.
Okay, I'm talking about dealing with the attorneys themselves and telling them, like I've done, that, you know, that you and I both know that this statute or this ordinance or whatever it is unconstitutional by the Supreme Court decisions or by the Circuit Court decisions or whatever. You and I both know this, and you got to get their agreement. I got the attorneys to agree with me that they're unconstitutional. Okay, and so and once you get that agreement, then you say, look, you need to take care of that problem. You need to get that statute taken off the books or rewrite it so that it's constitutional. You got to do something, or else litigation will ensue. I will see to it that litigation ensues in the federal courts. And I know when I told that to these attorneys, they said, no, we don't want litigation. He says, as a matter of fact, he got off his duff and he went to the city that had the ordinance that I was arguing about. And he went that night and talked to the mayor, and they got together the very next day and had a meeting over.
Okay, Ed, okay, here's the problem. I know you know what you are talking about, and you're giving us all these details about going to the lawyers and everything, and I still don't know what is the point of contention. What are you suing for? Who wronged you? What are you trying to correct?
Okay, this one is over First Amendment rights. Rights of First Amendment. To the Constitution.
Okay, hang on. Let me ask you some questions. Hey, let me ask you a question here. Okay, how was your right to freedom of speech abridged? What is the offense?
Okay, the offense was soliciting. Okay, I was soliciting, and there's ordinances all over every city, even the state has ordinances that say you can't solicit for other groups, like I'm doing soliciting for veterans.
Oh, well, Ed, where were you soliciting?
On the street.
You were on a public street. Okay, I see that your case actually does have some merit. Unfortunately, though, we're coming up on a commercial break, and so I'm going to have to let you go here. The problem I have is I think our current government is way past any redemption, and it's a waste of time to go on in and talk to any of them about the Constitution, because clearly there is no desire to reform the current government, because those who are benefiting from the current system do not want anything to change. I can understand why there might be ordinances regarding solicitation, and I can understand why they could be challenged on First Amendment grounds, but I think we've got larger issues to deal with here right now. So thank you very much for the phone call. We're going to let you go, and we're going to go ahead and close the phone lines for the rest of the show, because I am way, way, way behind on my talking points, and I've got a lot of stuff I need to share with you. Now, individual who called in from Las Vegas has sent me in these links to these polls. They are very much in favor of Donald Trump. We're hearing right now that in Arkansas, Donald Trump is leading Hillary Clinton by 23%. And the demographic breakdown is very interesting, because with the younger people of Arkansas, they're okay with Hillary and they're falling for this thing about groping and whatnot. But people of my age and older who remember what life was like under the Clintons in Arkansas are absolutely not supporting her at all. They've had one taste of the Clintons. Once is enough. Learn from their wisdom. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. And polls are showing that Trump is winning the early vote in Texas by a landslide, according to Sid Miller, who's the Texas Agriculture Commissioner. There's been a huge surge of Republican voters showing up to vote for Trump. We're probably going to see the highest participation of voters in this election that we've seen in a very, very, very long time. People who have not voted for years are deciding they need to go to the polls and maybe not so much vote for Donald Trump as vote against Hillary Clinton. And these are people who are not being contacted by the corporate media polls because they're not registered with a party, they're not active, and they're showing up, and they're registered with no party affiliation. Over at Facebook, they had a live poll there. Trump was winning by 95%. Another poll was broken out by gender. Let me look at this one. Trump 82% among women. So Hillary's pander to the vagina vote does not seem to be working. Chairman of the House Oversight and Government Reform Committee, Jason Chavez, is saying he's going to vote for Donald Trump. And a lot of people are openly talking about refusing a Hillary presidency. And former Congressman Joe Walsh, who's now a fellow talk radio host, is saying that if the election is stolen from Donald Trump, he's going to grab his musket. Personally, I'd be more in favor of something a little bit more modern. But I understand the sentiment. Now, I don't want to see a bloody revolution in the streets of the United States of America, but there's a lot of people out there with a different opinion. And again, going back to what John F. Kennedy said, those who make peaceful revolution impossible make violent revolution inevitable. And I don't want to see that happen. But it's not under my control. It's under the control of those people who are trying to shove Hillary Clinton down our throats and up our nose. Are they willing to risk an open rebellion in this country? And again, even under the best of circumstances, if they take this away from Donald Trump by electronic vote fraud, by illegal immigrant votes, by dead votes, if they somehow arm twist the Electoral College to flip it over, Hillary is going to find herself the chief executive of an absolutely paralyzed and impotent government. Because the American people are not going to listen to anything this government has to say. They're not going to obey that government. They're not going to fill out the endless mounds of paperwork. They're not going to comply. They're not going to cooperate. They're going to say, go make somebody else's life miserable. Go fight the wars yourself. Go pay for all this yourself. You're all rich people. Why do you keep coming to us for more money to give to Israel? Now, there's a story coming out on Your News Wire that apparently Michelle Obama was overheard saying that Hillary's health is in such poor shape that they're literally pumping her full of stimulants to keep her going. We already know from one of Huma Abedin's emails that if there isn't a podium for Hillary to lean on, there's only a finite amount of time she can talk, and the speeches have to be cut short. There's another video that just broke of Hillary Clinton needing a hand from somebody to get up one step to make a speech. And I understand the campaign is very long and arduous, and it's a strain, but in a way, that's the trial by fire that assures us that the chief executive has the physical wherewithal to do the job. Now, Newt Gingrich, as you know, had a bit of an argument with Megyn Kelly, basically saying that she was so obsessed with the allegations that Donald Trump groped all these women 30 years ago. And he called her on it, saying, why aren't you just as obsessed with all of the allegations against Bill Clinton and how Hillary covered for him? And Megyn Kelly got all defensive and in a huff. Oh, that doesn't matter what Bill did or what Hillary did. I'm here to just make you think that Donald Trump is bottled slime. All right. We got to take a break. I'll tell you the rest of the story after we come back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show, and we're talking about the tiff between Newt Gingrich and Megyn Kelly. And let me back up here a little bit. Remember during that very first GOP debate, and Megyn Kelly went right after Donald Trump, on this issue about how you hate women and mistreat them and everything. And Trump turned it around on her. The audience was laughing and on his side. And you could see in Megyn Kelly's face that look, I will get you somehow. You're just a man. You're supposed to roll over and die when I challenge you. And so more recently, Megyn Kelly has been just totally focused on these unfounded and in many cases already discredited allegations that Donald Trump groped these women 30 years ago. And in the 30 years from then until now, the women were telling their friends what a great guy Donald Trump was, and they thought it was wonderful. And then all of a sudden, they're in financial trouble, and they're getting mysterious infusions of cash to pay their bills. And they're out there saying, Donald Trump touched me 30 years ago, and I've kept it a secret all this time, and now that it's... Okay? And Newt Gingrich called Megyn Kelly on this. She doesn't want to talk about the policies. She doesn't want to talk about the WikiLeaks revelations of corruption. She's just totally obsessed with Donald Trump's sex life. I don't know, maybe she secretly lusts after him. And Gingrich called her on it saying, why aren't you concerned about Bill Clinton's sexual appetites, the rape accusations, and how Hillary destroyed the lives of these women to keep them quiet? And Megyn Kelly basically said, I'm not interested. It's Donald Trump. And as of today, apparently Newt Gingrich is now off the guest list for Fox and Friends. They don't want him coming on back because he's just a man, and he refused to roll over and die when Megyn Kelly challenged him. And what's really interesting about this is Megyn Kelly's out there just criticizing Trump for objectifying women, and yet she posed in GQ magazine in what could be perhaps generously called cheesecake photos. Skimpy little black thing with the strap off the shoulder. And it's not porn, it's not even softcore porn, but it's definitely an objectifying image of herself. So it's apparently okay for Megyn Kelly to objectify women, but not okay for Donald Trump. And it's just another indicator of the media bias. Now, more WikiLeaks are coming on out. Apparently, the Hillary campaign considered denouncing the mayor of New York City, de Blasio, as a terrorist after he refused to give her campaign his endorsement. And, I mean, it's just absurd, the idea. I mean, I can understand Hillary wanting to go after de Blasio, but at the same time, de Blasio is already under fire for changing around the rules that make it easier for the illegal immigrants to vote multiple times. It's just a reminder for those of you working on the Hillary campaign, you are only as good as the last favor you've done to her or done for her. And after that, all bets are off. And you remember what happened in the first 6 months of Bill Clinton's first term in the White House. Many of his key supporters, the ones who knew what was really going on, died under suspicious circumstances. All 4 of his top fundraisers, the ones who were coming in with huge boxes of cash that listed the DNC headquarters as the address of the donor, all 4 of them died in 1 suspicious plane crash and 3 suspicious suicides, including White House Deputy Counsel Vincent Foster and Ed Willie, who supposedly shot himself in the head with a shotgun on the very same day that Bill Clinton was groping his wife, Kathleen Willey, in the Oval Office. Now, even though the corporate media refuses to cover this story, and perhaps an indication that it doesn't really matter anymore, an indication of the true power and reach of the independent media, the WikiLeaks fallout is having an effect. Hillary is hemorrhaging votes, and even the corporate media, as hard as they're pushing to oversample Democrats, are having to say that the gap between Trump and Hillary is closing, meaning the real gap of Trump being ahead of Hillary is widening. And we still have a week and a half to go to the elections. She's in trouble. They know that she's in trouble. All right, we're going to get... Actually, I'm going to skip on down here and get some of the science news out of the way since we're this close to the end of the show here. More snow is expected into Friday over in the Northeast. And Al Gore is running around with a hairdryer trying to melt it as quickly as it comes on down, because he's still out there pushing that human-caused global warming. It's real. What are you going to believe? Your own eyes with all that snow, or these very expensively produced videos and charts that the scientists we hired at high salaries have put together for you? Let's see. New flu vaccine manufactured by Novartis is being used in Italy. It's starting to kill people. It's killed already 13 people, directly attributed to adverse reactions to that vaccine. Now, we mentioned this yesterday. The Washington Post is now admitting the Zika virus doesn't cause brain deformities. It must be something else. And even the Brazilian scientists were saying, no, it's got nothing to do with Zika and the mosquitoes. Zika's been around for 75 years. The microcephalic babies didn't show up until pregnant mothers were mandated by the Brazilian government to get a new vaccine. And then all of a sudden, the microcephalic babies, oh, it must be the mosquitoes, it must be Zika, it could never, ever be the vaccines. So up here in the United States of America, they've mounted these huge extermination operations, especially in Florida. It's been found out the governor of Florida is tied in with the company that's doing the spraying through his wife's investment company. And it doesn't solve any problem. Zika was never an issue. Most people self-immunize against Zika. And in the meanwhile, they've zorched all those honeybees. Because the spraying for the mosquitoes is killing off the honeybees that are needed to pollinate natural food sources. And I'm sure Monsanto's out there saying, yes, yes, keep on spraying. There's Zika, there's dengue, kill all the bugs. And then people will have to buy our laboratory-created seeds. Now, the International Agency for Research on Cancer is facing criticism over its classification of carcinogens. And it's apparently been advising its scientific experts not to publish internal research data on its 2015 report on how glyphosate is probably carcinogenic. And the agency is saying that they have to do so to protect its intellectual property rights, since it's the sole owner of such materials. In other words, there's another cover-up coming on these things. Over 500 methane vents have been found along the U.S. West Coast. This is Dr. Robert Ballard. He's back out there doing what he does best. And the issue here is a complicated one. We know that methane bubbling into water depletes it of oxygen. We know that methane, when it reaches the atmosphere until it naturally decomposes, is a very heavy, a very potent greenhouse gas. And the climate models don't take this into account. The climate models are very simplistic. They're designed to produce a desired result. Now, there is one issue that is down there that people need to be paying attention to, and it's called methane hydrate. And it's very bizarre stuff. Every once in a while, a piece of it will break loose, and it will float to the surface because it's basically lighter and less dense than seawater. And it is a water and methane clathrate. It forms deep enough where the methane doesn't form bubbles. And instead, it sort of merges with the water, and it produces this stuff that looks for all the world like sherbet. And it'll float to the surface, and it fizzes because the methane is outgassing, and you can set it on fire. And there had been talk about trying to exploit this as an energy source, which I think would be one of the most dangerous things you could ever do. Because most of the methane hydrate is underneath a burden of mud and debris that's holding it in its place. If you start sucking it out and there's a cave-in, you could release a huge amount of this material, which would come to the surface of the ocean, melt, and you would have a huge cloud of methane going into the sky. If you're near a shore, you could be killing life on the shore. If there was a major release of methane, that really would trigger a major amount of warming. And I mention this because so many times in recent decades, we have seen industry and science handle these things so recklessly. There's almost like no consideration for what's going to happen after the next stockholders meeting. Whether it's the GMO plants, vaccine adjuvants, methane hydrates. And I hope that if Donald Trump does overcome the election fraud, we already know from his speech yesterday, he wants to expand NASA and retask it. And I think what needs to be done is we need to have a bit more caution exercised over anything that's being proposed, whether it's human-caused global warming. We need to understand politics and corruption, politics and corporations will corrupt science to their own advantage, and there needs to be a check on that. Because sooner or later, somebody's going to make a mistake with drastic world-changing consequences. I'm still very concerned about that epicite gene, because if it broke into the wild, then it's only a matter of time before all the corn on planet Earth renders any human who eats it incapable of reproduction. And then you're talking an extinction-level event. I'm a big fan of science, but it's got to be responsible science. It's got to be accurate. It has to follow scientific method. It has to be truthful. It has to be factual. Right now, science is being used as a replacement for religion in our society. They can't get the guy with the religious robes to convince you of anything anymore, so they'll get an actor in a white laboratory coat, and he says, up is down, and left is right, and black is white, and you're supposed to believe him because he's a scientist. No. Science is never, ever about belief. It's about reproducibility of results. And I look at what passes for science education in our schools today, where it's just repeating a bunch of names from history of famous scientists and regurgitating the dogma that is fed to them about things like global warming. When I was a kid, science was something that was very active in the classrooms. You did experiments. You built things. You verified for yourself what was going on. I remember there was a toy store near my home when I lived in West Covina. You could go on down and just buy bottles of chemicals and labware and just make whatever you wanted to make. The last time I saw a chemistry set in the store, it was this little book of papers that were saturated with microscopic amounts of chemical that you would wet and pinch together to get a reaction. And you would follow what was in the book, and that's all you could do. There was no means to design your own experiments to find out something that you'd seen. Remember, 90% of scientific discovery begins with some scientist saying, wow, I wasn't expecting that. I wonder what made that happen. Serendipity. And our current scientific education rules that out. I admire those young people who are able to excel in science despite the crippling manner in which science is being taught, especially by Common Core. All righty, getting on back here. We put up a video on WhatReallyHappened.com, and it actually was made a while ago. This is the deathbed confession of CIA agent E. Howard Hunt to his son. And shortly before he died, Hunt confessed he was part of the assassination team that killed JFK. And this was not the first time his name came up, because remember the three tramps in Dealey Plaza? They were one of them was identified as E. Howard Hunt, and another one was Frank Sturgis. It was published in Liberty Lobby. And by the way, this is what the Watergate break-in was really all about. The Democrats had gotten high-quality photos of those tramps and knew these were Nixon henchmen. And they were going to use it to blackmail Nixon, if not to throw the election, at least to control him while he was president. And that's why they broke into the Watergate to get those pictures. That's why E. Howard Hunt led the break-in, because it was his rear end on the line there. But shortly before he died, he made a full confession to his son. There's a video of it, and you can look at it. And so, yes, the Warren Commission was a load of USDA choice bovine excrement that they shoveled at you. How many times do you have to be lied to before you understand you are ruled by a government that controls you with lies, fraud, and deception? Okay, now then, latest report, Obamacare is sick and getting sicker. It's in serious trouble. People can't afford it. So what are they going to do? Well, the architect of Obamacare is out there on CNN saying that Obamacare will work as long as we continue, imposing huge, expensive penalties on Americans for refusing to go along. And this is classic politics. It's a screwed up mess, but they're just going to whip you until you go along with it, and then they can say, see, it's all working. Everybody's enrolled. Nobody's getting adequate health care. Nobody's getting any benefit from these expensive health insurance policies because of the deductibles. But this government can never admit error or failure or change its course. Now, here's something else. A little bit of good news. You probably heard this story about how the Pentagon was seeking repayment of bonuses paid to California National Guard. Excuse me a sec. Now, excuse me, I need a little water. Now, these bonuses were overpayments, and the Pentagon was justified in asking for the money back. But most of these people who got these bonuses are now retired, and they can't come up with it. So the latest word is they're dropping this whole program, and that's good news to these veterans. We got to take a break for commercials. We'll be back. Hey, Angelo, hi, America. Welcome back to the show here. And I'm sorry my voice is failing here in these last few minutes. So it's good news for those National Guard veterans. The Pentagon is abandoning this attempt to get them to repay some overpayments from decades ago, plus accruing interest, which I think was tacky, since the Pentagon made the mistake in the first place. Also, it was pointed out that nobody is demanding repayment of payments mistakenly given to illegal immigrants and refugees. They're just being allowed to keep the money. And I understand the Pentagon, despite all the taxpayer money that's poured in there, they're coming up a little bit short. They've misplaced about $6 trillion. They don't know where it went, and they're trying to figure out, how they're going to get things to be handled, how they're going to pay for all the stuff that they're doing. Well, a little more responsible planning might do it, because it turns out over the last 2 decades, the Pentagon has spent $58 billion with a B on failed weapons systems that went nowhere. The Army's Future Combat Systems was supposed to be a networked personal computer thing. That got dropped. The RH-66 Comanche stealth helicopters got canceled. And the Pentagon has invested lots of money in developing weapons technology that never got delivered. I remember the on-again, off-again campaign over the B-1 bomber. Got it almost completed, program canceled. Then program renewed, we're going to call it the B-1B. And that $58 billion with a B does not include weapon systems in use that are utter failures, like the F-22, the F-35, the Independence-class littoral combat ships, the Freedom-class littoral combat ships, the Gerald R. Ford, the Zumwalt. Vast sums of money going in there to make the machinery of death. Now, Hillary Clinton's campaign advisor, former CIA Director Chris Morrell, who's out there saying we need to kill Russians in Syria, has come up with a new idea that the U.S. should start intercepting Iranian ships in international waters to help Saudi Arabia. Oh, yeah, that's going to calm things down. Here's your rifle, Chris. They're just so hot for a war. Now, militants in Syria are now receiving U.S.-made anti-aircraft systems, man-portable missiles. And basically, this is the U.S. rendering assistance to terrorists in full view of the world. The U.S. is responding to recent Russian successes in Aleppo by threatening more sanctions. A little bit of an embarrassment. There's nobody left to sanction. They've sanctioned everybody in Russia that they can. They can't sanction inside Russia. So I guess they're going to say, well, we're going to unsanction you, then we're going to re-sanction you just to show you how much we disapprove of you interfering with our efforts to take over another country. There's the music. Time for me to get on out of here and rest my vocal cords. Hopefully my voice will be a little bit better tomorrow. So remember, you are all part of the independent media. Take what you're learning here on the radio show. Take what you learn at the website. Carefully and gently put it before the eyes of people still enslaved to TV, especially those WikiLeaks revelations. They're having an effect, and we need to get it out there. And working together, we can overcome the censorship of the corporate media. We'll be back tomorrow. Aloha, America.